I think it was Scott Lang. This is probably 13 years ago, was talking to a high school band about how my students clap for the other band when they go on the field. They're always cheering on other bands. And we do that. Anytime we were at a place where there was another band around, we would cheer them on. At the Pinstripe Bowl, we took the field. Michigan State's band did the same thing. They're clapping and cheering us on as we're taking the field for halftime.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the good fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and leaders in the band community. The Everything Band podcast is a proud member of the Music Teachers Development Podcast Network. The Muted Network provides support in the form of audio-on-demand programming designed by and for music educators. You can find more information about our network at mutedpodcasts.com. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. I appreciate your time and hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you knew one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, help your students live up to the best that is in them through music. And now on to my next guest, Tim Heath. Hi, Tim.
Hi.
How are you today?
I am great.
So, Tim, thank you for joining me. You have been a very supportive listener of the show and someone who I really appreciate the advice you've given me over the years. You and I met a few years back because we have a mutual friend who you taught with for a while. So,
yes, DeMonte Thurman.
Yep, I'm happy you could be on the show finally.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'm very excited to do this.
Yeah. So, Tim, can you introduce yourself to everybody and tell them why you might be on the Everything Band podcast?
Sure. So my name's Tim Heath. I'm from North Carolina originally, and I'm currently living in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, teaching at Wake Forest University, where I serve as the director of athletic bands and also an assistant teaching professor in the Department of Music. And this is my first year there. I've just finished my first season as the marching band director of the Spirit of the Old Gold and Black. And we just wrapped up a great season. Just finished our bowl game. And so I'm kind of on vacation right now. So,
Tim, the Wake Forest band and football team was at the Pinstripe Bowl. You had a chance to see Aris Golden while you were there?
I did. Her and as well as the other directors of Michigan State's program.
So, Tim, can you tell me about yourself? Can you tell me about your origin story? How'd you get started in music?
Sure. I, like most, I started playing in sixth grade band. I actually played trumpet in grade school, and most who know me now kind of know me as a percussionist. But I did not start studying percussion in sixth grade. I played trumpet all the way through high school, actually. I was in a small community. The name of the town is Grifton, North Carolina. And I had a fantastic middle school band director. Her name is Dee Dee Phillips. And I believe she's retired now. I think she actually ended up spending the last part of her career in administration. But in Eastern North Carolina, she has a wonderful reputation. She was a great director who really knew how to push us. And just demanded excellency, and I think she just was fantastic to get me started. Then I played trumpet again in high school, but I started playing drum set also when I was in ninth grade, and I played in jazz band. I played drum set in jazz band, played drum set in pep band, and quickly actually decided that I was going to pursue drum set and move to Nashville when I graduated high school. So it was a little different than some of your other guests probably. So when I graduated high school, I'd played high school band, been in the high school band all the way through, enjoyed my time, very much loved it, very much loved the Friday night aspect of high school band. I enjoyed, the competition side, but just the excitement, the noise, the lights, the thrill of cheering on a football team, and also playing music that, the fans could relate to as well. That was very exciting to me. And that kind of stuck with me. But once I graduated high school, I pursued drum set. And I spent a year traveling with a Christian rock band. And then I spent 3 years working part-time with a country band and doing some traveling, playing some interesting gigs. Let me just say that. But also during those 3 years, I did decide that I should probably pursue college, and I wanted to pursue music. So I started studying concert percussion with a local retired educator, and he helped me to build my skills to be able to get into college. And once I decided to do that, I attended a small university, UNC Pembroke, for a semester. I did transfer, but I learned a lot at that university, and I ended up transferring to UNC Greensboro, and I finished my undergraduate degree there. And it was there where I decided that, being a band director was something that I was interested in and wanted to pursue. I ended up teaching a summer camp at Clinton High School. And when I did that, I worked with the front ensemble, and I kind of had that light bulb effect. And I got that effect by watching the students who actually had that. Just seeing how excited they got when they would get something right, and they could get better each rep when we would rehearse things. That stuck with me, and that was kind of the moment where I knew, okay, I want to be a teacher. I love this. I enjoy working with these students. I enjoy seeing their happiness that they get, the excitement that they get when they succeed, but also being able to push them, to not get frustrated and to try it again, and being able to help them in that way. So from there, when I was in UNCG, actually I met my wife, Samantha, and she was a band director as well. We ended up teaching together, co-teaching. She was the middle school feeder for the high school that I was teaching at, Spring Creek High School in Eastern North Carolina. And we did that for 4.5 years. And I graduated mid-year, so that's where the half year comes from. And then she came in, and right after I graduated, she had graduated, and we were there for 4 years together. But she ended up going to a different school and teaching middle school. And I knew that during that time, I had, pursued my master's part-time at UNC Pembroke. And I knew that I wanted to eventually go back and get my doctorate. And that revelation kind of came from teaching adjunct while I was teaching high school at the University of Mount Olive. So my last year of teaching public school, I decided to go back and teach middle school. And I did that for a year. And then my wife and I packed our bags and moved down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where I spent 3 years as a graduate teaching assistant with the university bands program. And one of those years I was working with the music education program. And then after that, I was very fortunate to get a great university position at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. And I say very fortunate because it was a fantastic school, great opportunity. And also I didn't have to move, which was really nice, being able to graduate coming out of a program and not having to relocate initially. And I did that for 3 years. And at Samford, I was teaching the athletic band program. I was teaching instrumental music education, some conducting courses, and I also was co-directing. Well, I guess I probably shouldn't say co-direct. I was doing some directing with the wind ensemble also with my colleague, Demondre Thurman.
There's a lot there. So I want to kind of rewind a little bit and go back to the beginning, if that's okay with you. And so you mentioned that you started on trumpet in grade school, but did you play trumpet all throughout high school? I thought I heard you mention that.
I did. I played trumpet all the way through.
So you were doing trumpet in the marching/concert band and drum set in the jazz ensemble?
Yes.
Okay. How did you learn drum set? Did you do that through school, or was that self-taught?
So a little bit of self-taught, and then also I decided to take lessons.
Oh, okay.
I did take lessons with a local professional musician who was traveling with, in our area, we had a lot of Southern gospel groups. And he was the drummer for a group, and he had been on the road traveling with them for, I think, probably 10 years. And he was my teacher and really helped me with a lot of things. He didn't help me so much with the reading aspect. That I kind of picked up from just being able to read and understand notation from playing trumpet and music theory studies in school. But that, and honestly, just spending a couple hours a day being that rock and roll drummer people talk about, where they go in the room and they put the headphones on and they just play.
I think that's interesting because I have a lot of guests have changed instruments either late in high school or in college. And I find this really interesting that that you're able to do this, that you're able to go get a music degree in an instrument that wasn't something that was your main instrument. But it sounds like the drum set probably was. The trumpet was actually probably your secondary when I listen to your story.
Yeah, I think it was. I actually still play. I don't advertise that I play trumpet because I'm not that type of player where I really want to play in front of people. But yeah, drum set was definitely the key to getting me into school, and it became my main instrument.
Remember your first term of teaching? Learning all the skills that you don't get taught in music school, managing a transitioning culture in your classroom, finding out that you have to teach guitar this term? During those early years, we found out that leaning on a community of music educators was important, not only for building that knowledge in ourselves, but also maintaining enough sanity to serve the students right in front of us. Amused is a podcast centered around a community of music teachers. Between the four of us, we teach choir, band, orchestra, general, jazz, and marching band at the elementary through collegiate levels. We certainly don't have all the answers, but you're welcome to listen in while we try to find them. Join us while we work through the challenges of music teaching and celebrate the joy of bringing music making into the lives of young people. In each episode, you'll hear stories, both good and bad, about that week of teaching, and we'll try and tackle an issue that one of us is struggling with. Something we're all taught is that music brings people together, but being the only teacher in your subject at a site can be really isolating. We think everyone ought to be a part of a community, and you're welcome to come join ours. Episodes come out on Wednesdays during the school year, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts and at amusedcast.org.
All right, so now tell me about your high school program. What was that like? What was that first job? What did you learn in that first job that you have carried with you?
My first job, it was at a 612 high school. And it was really unique because we were all on the same campus. So it was a smaller community. And I came in and inherited a program that I think it was a successful program. I think they were doing a lot of wonderful things. And I inherited some great students. But what I did also inherit were a few challenges. Anyone who's familiar with teaching, in a rural setting, you're facing some challenges, and especially for this particular area, it was a very large farming community, and in that community, encouraging students to stick with band past middle school was really the challenge. And honestly, it was just because you're trying to get students to understand that there's more options than just what they've seen. And what I mean by that is a lot of times the parents would not encourage the students to branch out and do things other than something that they knew was going to make, potential income for them. And that was a challenge. So really what I learned from that was trying to better understand a community, to better understand, putting goals and values in front of parents and in front of students to get them to see the benefits of music and the benefits of being involved in the arts and what that can do for them long term, not only from playing music, but from lifelong skills that are going to better help them to be prepared to just be productive, to be successful, when they pursue whatever it is after high school they're pursuing.
So, Tim, that's a big thing you just said there. This is, of course, our main goal is to have relevance in what we teach and what we do. So how did you learn? How did you find that to go? How do we communicate the values that come from learning the arts?
For me, I think getting to understand people and understand what they value and being able to relate to them and being able to make a connection with them so that whatever it is you're trying to advocate or to teach them, they actually are going to listen to you. I do think that is the first step, because I think a lot of times people advocate for things where they just kind of talk at people. instead of truly making a connection or making a relationship. And I think a lot of that comes from getting people to trust you. And then once you have that trust and once you have that relationship, just providing them. And for me, it was not so much of telling them what we're going to do as much as, or telling them the importance. It was providing an opportunity for them to see the importance. And, I would bring in someone that was relevant to them. For an example, Jason Aldean, the country artist. That's not who I brought in, but he was in a community nearby playing a concert. So I brought in his drum set player, who was a friend, and had an opportunity to put him in front of my students and to get them to see from someone that they could and their families could relate to, because that's someone they're listening to on the radio. Get them to see, what he does for a living, his story. And then also, getting this particular artist to talk to them about the skills that it takes to be successful, no matter what they're doing, and what he did and how he did that through study of music through high school, but also, studying music in college as well. And for me, I think that was probably one of the tipping points where the community went, okay, all right, we can see what you're doing here. We're going to keep buying in.
Yeah, it's a particular challenge. I taught at a university when I taught that I had a lot of first generation students who came from rural areas, and you see they're a different kind of student than many of the other sort of, I don't know how I want to put this, but sort of maybe the more traditional music majors that come from, middle class, upper middle class families, in the suburbs. It's a different kind of mindset coming from these kids. They maybe not are exposed to the same kinds of things that others are.
Absolutely. And for me, I was one of those students. And that was an opportunity, to be able to relate to them and to be able to, I think that really was a bonding ability between us was that I was very similar to them.
Yeah, you understood where they're coming from.
Absolutely.
I have one more question about your high school experience. When you got to the high school, you mentioned that it was a pretty successful program. Did you have any problems transitioning after a successful director?
A little bit. That first year, I did learn the lesson of don't change very much when you come in. And I tried not to change much at all. But what I did learn was no matter what I did, if I changed even the slightest thing, I wasn't the previous director. And from that standpoint, it was just a lesson of learning how to navigate that. I mean, it was also my first job too. So I was also, learning how to better design my curriculum, how to better select my literature that I'm going to play for the instrumentation that I had. Absolutely. And they had a strong bond with the previous director. And I think for the most part, it was successful. I wouldn't say that it was a fantastic first year, but I definitely think we all survived. So
Yeah. No, I think that's always a difficult thing. Anytime you take over a new job, there's always going to be those feelings, and we all know this. Anyone who's taught knows this. You're never going to be the person who was before.
Right.
All right, Tim. So how about that transition? You said that you were going to go get your doctorate and that you wanted to have some experience teaching middle school before you did. Why did you make that decision? There are probably some listeners out there who maybe don't want to teach middle school or going, why would you do that?
That's a great question. I think for me, I just wanted to have a better understanding. And I felt at the time that if I was going to eventually train future band directors, that I should have at least a stronger understanding of what it means to be in a middle school setting. And, I think that it was a very good lesson for me. What I did find was it helped me to identify some strengths and weaknesses in myself, especially with my personality, with the way that I relate to students, but also my expectations of students. I think one of the things that I struggled with was I had gone from being able to give, my section leaders or my student leadership a checklist and say, hey, can we make sure everything's on the trailer? Can we make sure everything's ready to go for the competition? Hey, we've got this event. Can you guys go set up the chairs and stands for this? I had come from that environment to hey, can we just sit down and, all right, we need to stop talking. We've got to be able to play. It really helped me with classroom management.
All right. So then you go to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and you were involved, I assume, with the $1 Million Band while you were there.
I was.
Mm-hmm. And so what was that experience like at the University of Alabama as a doctoral student for maybe some listeners who are thinking about pursuing their doctorate?
Sure. Yeah. So that experience was fantastic. I will say when I first started looking at schools, my wife and I, we had a daughter who was, when I was applying, I guess she had just been born. So she was about 6 months old. And we were trying to find a place where I could get what I was looking for, but we could also, comfortably afford to live, but also would be able to provide us with a place for our daughter to potentially, grow up the earlier part of her life and have what she needs as well. So there was lots of variables that we were looking at, and we did look, in the Northeast area, also in the Southeast area as well. And Alabama was a place that Neil Flum, the percussion instructor at that time, had approached me before I made a decision to attend there and asked if I wanted to come in and teach the front ensemble. And that was kind of the hook for me. That's what made me go, okay, all right, I get an opportunity to work with the $1 Million Band. I'm all about this. And when I got there, I realized very quickly that it was a different level than what I had been used to working with. And I had to step up and meet that level quickly, which was great because I love challenges. I love, for those who know me, they know that I don't sit still. I'm always active. I'm always trying to do something and always trying to get better at my skill. So this was a fantastic opportunity for that. But at the same time, football wise, they had just come off of a back-to-back national championship, and football was huge in that area. The marching band was huge. I mean, I think my first year there, they were like 420, 425, something like that as far as the enrollment. And it was just a large program. But I took away skills from there that I would not have gotten, I feel like, if I hadn't have gone there. I feel like that, there's lots of programs that are fantastic and they're all going to offer different things. But for me and for my career, I felt that it was a great place to be, just because I knew that I wanted to do athletic bands. And I felt that the professors there were very interested in helping us. They wanted to get to know us. Dr. Ozello, the director of bands there, really works well with taking a student where they are and building upon that skill set, but then also being able to push you a little bit further. And they're very flexible as well. I actually went to pursue my doctorate in music education, and I will say the music education program the professors there allowed me to take conducting lessons for all my electives, when lit classes. I was also still studying percussion lessons as well, because I wanted to be a great researcher, but I also wanted to get better as a band director and as a musician. And it really allowed for that opportunity.
So you were able to do some of the conducting stuff while you were doing the music ed stuff.
Yes. As a graduate teaching assistant in the band program, you were able to work with concert bands. Some of the students worked with symphonic bands. Some of the students worked with wind ensemble. I was able to work with pep band, from volleyball to men's basketball up to gymnastics, which gymnastics events are fantastic. They're lots of fun. And then, for football, being able to take pep bands out and also being able to conduct the percussion ensemble. So yeah, lots of opportunities.
You are now the director of bands at Wake Forest University, and this is a big ACC.
Director of athletic bands.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course. The director of athletic bands at Wake Forest University. And this, of course, is an ACC school, so you're now playing in a Power 5 conference and dealing with all the things that go along with being with that as far as athletics. And so what's that transition been like from Samford, a smaller private school, to Wake Forest, a larger private school? At least larger in terms of athletic stature.
Sure. I didn't really know what to expect. I think being at Stanford was great because it allowed me to get a better understanding of what it means to teach in a university, what particular titles are within the university. Because one of the things that I found quickly when I was teaching, when I started teaching at Stanford, is, when you're teaching public school, there's only but so many people in the front office. And in the athletic department, there's only but so many people. So everyone does multiple jobs. So if I needed to use the football field, I knew who to contact. Or if I needed to get something taken care of logistically that it's more on the academic side, I knew to go to the front office. So the biggest transition, honestly, is just figuring out what titles do what, really. And being at Stanford helped with that. But when I got to Wake Forest, I came in the summer. We moved June 26th, and I started July 1st. And I came into the front office, I came into my office and just kind of sat and started making a plan of, okay, here's the information I need. And I just started making phone calls. And what I found to be a little easier is that everyone seemed to be more receptive of the idea that I'm the new band director coming in. And the band program has, in my observation, more history and more presence across the campus. And I think that comes from the athletic presence that we have on campus as well. So the transition was really easy from the behind the scenes logistics side. The students, that portion was actually rather easy as well. I started communicating with the students probably in May. I tried to finish everything at Samford because I felt that was not fair to them for me to start working my new position while I was finishing my old one. And I started communicating with the students, and we just kind of talked. I sent some surveys. I wanted some feedback, and what are you looking for? What do you guys think that you've been doing that you love and that you think is working? Are there things you want to look at potentially changing? Are there things that you have ideas about that you think I should know? Or are there issues I should know about? So we had a lot of dialogue just through emails with the student leadership, and when they came in for the leadership camp, we sat down for about almost a day and just talked about the history of the program, talked about what they do, how they do things. Because for me, the hardest part was not the organizational admin side. I felt that, that's kind of the same from job to job. You just got to figure out who to go to. But for me, it was learning what's their traditions. What does game day look like for them? What do they play in the stands? What is the piece that, okay, we have a quarterback sack on the field. What do we play? The deacon walk that we have 2 hours before kickoff. What does that look like? Where does that take place? So there was a lot of learning of institutional knowledge. And I will say that Kevin Bowen, the director of bands, who's been here, I think 24 or 25 years, he has been fantastic in helping with that institutional knowledge. Also, he came in and said, hey, this is your first year doing this. Let me take some of the logistic things off your plate. You don't have to worry about that. And what I mean by that, some of these things are the director of bands drove the equipment truck on game day to the stadium. So I didn't have to worry about that. He ordered all the food for band camp. He took care of making sure all the meals are ready so that I could really concentrate on working with the students and putting my plans into action. So it was really a smooth transition. And I would say, because anytime we talked about this earlier, anytime a new director comes in, there's always some challenges and there's potentially some hiccups that'll come up along the way. We didn't really have any this year. Everything was really smooth. I think we made a lot of growth. Not only in building, further building the culture in the program, further building on, the previous groundwork that the other directors had done. And I think we walked away at the end of the season with everyone going, wow, this was a good year.
So you mentioned traditions that you had to learn. You mentioned the deacon walk. How did you do that? How did you learn those traditions? Were you relying on student leadership? Were you relying on institutional memory? How did you do that?
All of it, honestly. The students would kind of sit and talk to me about things. I talked to the staff that was already a part of the program. and also talking to our athletic marketing office, and if you don't know much about college marching band, we work very closely with the athletic marketing department. They're the ones who basically plan the entire game day experience from the moment you get out of your car to the moment you get in your car. Everything that happens other than on the field or on the court, it's all planned out through the marketing office. And so we worked very closely. Actually, at the time, the assistant director of athletic marketing, who later became director of fan experience, he was on my committee. So he and we worked closely all the way throughout the summer, and he was great. Any questions I had, we'd sit and we'd talk. And so it was really a combination of all of it. And what I did learn is the students kind of see things a little differently than the staff would remember things, or how they would remember things. So there was a little bit of having to kind of figure out, all right, one's saying this, one's saying that. It's going to be somewhere kind of in the middle. And that was on a few things, not many things. The other thing for me was, with college marching band pregame, what do you do once you get into the stadium and you get on the field? In some universities, it's just historic and iconic. Pregame for a lot of universities, it does not change. The numbers don't change. It's a set drill for from year to year for multiple years. And for us, it was me learning what they've done. Are we going to keep it the same? Are we making any changes? Working on, because we do something called DDB, Deacon Drum Beat. And what it is the percussion plays a cadence, and we do the Deacon spell out. And that's a part of pregame. So for me, the hardest part of the transition, honestly, all season long, was figuring out how to do the spell out. But once we got that, it was all good.
So how about student leadership? How much did you rely on the drum majors and your section leaders? And I imagine all of those were chosen before you.
They were. It was actually set up really well. The drum majors this year were seniors in the program, and it was set up that way so that my first year I would have students who had 3 prior years of knowledge and experience, but then after this year we get to start over with the ones that I feel are best fit for that position.
Wow, what an interesting choice that was.
Yeah, and it was just perfectly set in place. So I'm very thankful for that opportunity. But yeah, so the student leadership, I relied on them a lot. But truly, the 3 drum majors we had this year, they were fantastic. Those 3 I will remember forever because they have just been so supportive of what I was bringing to the table, my ideas, my plans. We sat and talked numerous times throughout the semester. They were really influential in taking what my idea of culture, and I'm very big on a positive culture, and I can explain further if you'd like. But they really helped with pushing that through the student leadership, but then also into the student body of the band as well. So those 3 have been very helpful.
Well, let's talk about this idea of leadership.
Sure. So it's a very simple policy. I do not allow them to say anything that is not uplifting while we're together as a band. And if it's constructive, we explain the difference between constructive and being negative. And trying to get them to understand that you can help someone with their marching without saying, okay, that wasn't good, and then move on. And trying to get them to say, hey, that was better than last time, but here's what we need to work on. Here's what I saw that you could do a little bit better. Or, hey guys, like our overall attitude is it's much stronger than it was last year. Let's keep pushing. And I would not allow them to make jokes that insulted anyone. And students, they love to play and pick at each other. And we all know that. We do as humans, just it's fun with friends. We kind of joke back and forth. And I wouldn't allow them to say anything negative while we're in uniform or while we're at rehearsal. And that includes, game day. Because a lot of universities, I don't think this is a secret, they have students kind of have their chants about other schools and things like that. And I'm not allowing that in my program. If it's not uplifting to someone and we're not encouraging or motivating someone in some way, it's not being said.
So Tim, this was your first year at Wake. And so what's something that really stands out from that first year, that first football season in the ACC? What was an experience that really jumps out as being special or memorable or something you're going to cherish?
Sure. So growing up in North Carolina, obviously I was very exposed to ACC, the conference for football, for basketball as well. For me, it was just being able to see in the stadium where we're playing, where it's our home stadium, just being able to see all of the different schools that I grew up watching, being able to say, okay, this is, the job that I have right now that I'm very honored and blessed to have is involving me watching a football game against Wake Forest and Carolina, Wake Forest and NC State, Wake Forest and Duke, because they were all home games this year. And that was just a very humbling and exciting experience all at the same time. And the other thing really is that, and I tell my students this all the time, I approach this as my career can change at any moment, as many of our careers can. I'm very honored to be able to work with students at such a fine institution, but also to be a part of such a great athletic program. And then also to just have the students that love and support their school like none other than I've seen. And I mean, and my time at Alabama was great, but my students here, I see, they truly love their school, the football team, the basketball team so far, but they love the marching band as well. And just being able to be a part of something that I think is going to just absolutely blow up and do great things in the next few years. I'm very excited to have these students that I have.
Yeah. And so, Tim, now sort of my last question about Wake before we move on. There's a lot of moving parts to being, as we mentioned, and I talked a lot about the organization of a college marching program with Olin Hannum at Oregon State. But for you, what I want to ask is, what lessons have you learned being at Wake that maybe you would have applied if you could go back and rewind the clock and be a high school director? What have you learned about being a marching band director that you would apply now to the high school level?
Oh, okay. So that's a great question. I definitely think the first one is choosing my music that we play on the field a little differently. Now that I have a several years under my belt with experience, just having a better understanding of the capabilities of my students and having the shows written for them so that it really can just help them to shine a little bit better, to help them to play with more confidence, to help, have it arranged where it's better in their actual playing range, where their technique can do. Because I feel like when I was a high school band director, I tried too much to compete with others and, go about having these programmatic shows where, it would be thinly scored and it wasn't really as audible to the audience and judges as it should have been. But at the same time, I don't think that I provided enough success for my students in that area. And I definitely have realized that from being at Wake and from being at Samford as well. And, with Alabama, it's a little bit different because there's 400 in the band. So that was just a completely different type of programming. But I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned is just, I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, man, if I could go back and do it again, I would have never picked those halftime shows. I would have done something very different with my students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In what ways specifically?
I would say just making sure that I had a better goal or better vision of my curriculum, where I wanted the students to be after year one or year two or year three. And by that, what I mean is building on their technical abilities, building on their overall musicianship skills, and then choosing literature that help to meet them a little closer to where they are, but still challenging them, but not making it to the point where it was about me as much, not making it about me as much and making it more about how can I really make this a successful and enjoyable experience for my students.
So, Tim, I realized that when we were talking in the beginning of the episode that I didn't ask something I usually ask all of my guests, and that was the question about what did you learn from your middle school and high school band directors that you kind of carry with you today? But I know that you and I in conversation have mentioned some other people who have been influential, and I was wondering if maybe you wanted to mention that.
Sure, that would be great. The first is Ken Ozello. He's the director of bands at the University of Alabama. He was very influential in my career, and I tell him, all the time, thank you, because he took a chance and gave me the assistantship with the bands. My first year at UA, I was with the music ed department, but I was working with the band as a graduate adjunct staff member. But Dr. Ozello gave me an opportunity to be a full-time band GTA my second and third year there. And I owe a lot to him, not only for the opportunity, because I don't think I'd be where I am now without that opportunity. But I owe a lot to him for giving me the opportunity, but just his mentorship, helping me throughout, not only with conducting, with my musical ideas and just pushing me and really providing a great foundation and also building on those skills as well. But just his mentorship throughout applying for jobs, and now what I view as a friendship as well. We talk much more frequently, and I ask questions, and we'll continue to pick his brain, and he's always very helpful. The other is a colleague that was actually at Alabama, but he left as soon as I started, and he's a friend of yours as well, Demondre Thurman. And Demondre had taken the job at Samford, where he was the euphonium low brass professor, but also the wind ensemble director. And when I got the job at Samford, Demondre was grateful. Not grateful, sorry. Let me try that again. When I got the job at Stanford, Demondre was very gracious to allow me to work with the wind ensemble. And I made, the comment earlier that I kind of co-directed. And what I mean by that is when he was traveling, and he travels a lot with his solo career and guest conducting career, I was able to rehearse the group, work with the group. I always had one or two pieces, one on each concert. So he allowed me to in a lot of ways, be the co-conductor of that ensemble while he was there and doing that. And the best part about that is just you have to have thick skin when you talk to Demondre, because Demondre is going to tell you what Demondre thinks. And it's fantastic for me because I'd ask him questions and I wanted to know the truth. I didn't want to know, I didn't want to sugarcoat an answer. And he would help me with conducting. He was also helping me with just musical decisions, and just really also, just like Dr. Ozello, continued to mentor me and is a great friend today, and still helps me when I have questions. I know I can pick up the phone and call him and ask him something, and he'll be right there to help.
Yeah, Demondre is a good guy. Episode 6, I believe, of this podcast.
Yes.
Back in the early days when I was just starting out and I was asking friends to be on the show, Demondre was gracious to be on, and he's a good guy, one of the great euphonium players in the world, and certainly someone worth knowing if you're in this community at all.
Hello, my name is Bryce Adams. I teach band at North Kitsap High School in Paulsbo, Washington. I'm commissioning Garrett Hope to compose a 4-movement suite for grade 3 band. Garrett Hope's music is exciting, it's accessible, the kids love it, it's fun to play. This piece will be inspired by the 4 winds from Greek mythology, each one having different character and style. The music will be delivered on November 1st, 2020. The first movement, Boreas, is already written, published, and available. I invite you to join a consortium with me to help bring this music to life. The best benefit to joining this consortium is the amazing deal. The buy-in for this project is only $250. You will receive the music for all 4 movements, totaling about 16 minutes worth of music. I would invite everyone to join the consortium. Supporting new music by living composers is what keeps our art alive. Garrett and I will both be at Midwest this year if you'd like to talk about this opportunity. You can find us at the TPC Collective booth. To join this consortium, go to garretthope.com/wins. That's wins with an S.
So, Tim, shall we go on to the final questions?
Sure.
All right. So you're a listener of the show. You know what's coming here.
I do, yes.
And so the first of these is, where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
So that's a really good question that I think for me, I look at, and I can almost kind of tie this into one of your other questions that you're going to ask. And for me, I think that is just, I look at students who, want to come to a university and they're interested in playing, but at the same time, they are also burned out. And I think one of the things that is happening is we are starting to get to a point where competitive band is year round. If you wanted, you can do fall band, you can do indoor programs, and then go straight into DCI if you're able to get into a core. And I think that for me personally, I would love to see a little less emphasis on the competition side and a little more emphasis on creating lifelong learners of music and appreciation of music. Because I see a lot of students who love high school band. They are super competitive. They're doing all of these things, these programs, these ensembles, they're traveling, and then they get to college and they don't pick up their instrument again. So finding a balance of creating a lifelong interest and appreciation and thirst for music, but also creating the competition side, because I do think there is healthy competition in that, students, they are pushed by being in a competitive setting. Because the reality is when you get out of high school and you're getting a job, you're competing against others for those jobs. And I think part of our life is there's a competitive part that we're always going to be facing. But for me, I'm still trying to completely develop my thought on that. But I do wish we could lean a little more towards the making music for the sake of making music.
It's an interesting question. As I have going through 100+ interviews, I've often thought about changing this question, but the fact that it is so complicated is why I leave it there, because there's no clear-cut answer, right? We can all point to examples where competition's been great, and we can all point to examples where competition is terrible. That's the thing with it, right?
If you watch social media at all, especially during marching band season, you see people start to insult other programs. And that's something I think where we take it too far, and it's not healthy, because there's a lot of programs that are just giving it their best, and they just don't have the resources and everything that others have. And I think once we get to a point where we're not encouraging people for giving it their best and we're making fun of small petty things, I think that's where we hit the unhealthy side.
All right, Tim. So this is another big question that doesn't have an easy answer, but is, how do you find a work-life balance in a career as a music teacher?
So that question to me is great, because I'm still trying to figure that out. And it's funny. And I hope that, if my wife were to listen to this, I keep thinking that I'm getting better at this, but my wife and my daughter don't always tell me that I'm getting better at this. So I'm still trying to figure that out, to be honest with you. And especially with what I do for a living, running an athletic band program. One of the things I've learned this year is, especially with these power conferences, is athletics doesn't stop. There's always a game. There's always some event. There's always something that the band is supposed to be at. So for me, I'm still working on this. One of the things that's good is where I work, my student or my kids can come to work with me and go to a game or go to an event. My students love seeing my daughter around. They have been grateful or gracious with their time when she's there. We played at a field hockey game this year. And, one of my drum majors just sat and talked with my daughter and kind of explained what was going on with the game. And I think that was a good opportunity for me and her, for her to see what I do. But I'm also still trying to figure out that balance of, okay, when can I shut it down and just go home and be a dad? When can I just be a husband? And that's hard, because for me, I've had to take my phone and turn it over Like I struggle when I eat lunch or eat dinner with someone, turn my phone over, because I have this stressful habit of, as soon as my phone beeps and I see an email, I have to check it. And I'm trying to fix that. And that's, just being very honest and vulnerable with you. That's something I'm still working on trying to determine, is balancing that.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult thing. All right, Tim. So what are the challenges facing music education, and how can we best meet them?
I think it goes back to the competitive side. There's two things for me. And it goes back to the idea of resources for schools. And also, I think when I look at programs, recently living in Alabama, moving back to North Carolina, having taught in a different part of the state as well, I look at schools that don't have the same amount of resources as schools that, live in a higher SES level community. And I see one of the things that is happening is the divide between the haves and the have-nots in the music programs, I think, are getting a little bit further apart. And I think the challenge is encouraging those students or those directors and programs that don't have the amount of money and resources, is finding ways to encourage them to continue to keep pushing and to find a way to close that gap. And I don't have the solution. I'd love to be a part of a team that can figure that out, because smaller schools have my heart. I have a passion for smaller programs. And I think that is going to be one of the issues that we run into, is just the divide is getting further apart.
All right, Tim, I can give you a time machine and set it to the day of your high school graduation. What advice would you offer to yourself?
That's a great question that I think about a lot. And I can tell you 100%, I would invest more in my health, and I would invest more in my wealth. And what I mean by that is, when I was younger, and we're all younger, people tell us, oh, you need to invest, you need to do this, you need to do that. Make sure that you're drinking more water. Just looking back, I would have definitely listened to people more who were trying to mentor me and teach me some of those life lessons. Musically, I think I would have probably pushed myself to play the trumpet a little bit more, or study the trumpet a little more than I did. But really and truly, I think it's just about me personally as a person, investing in myself a little bit more, and also investing in my family a little bit more, spending more time with my family. When I was trying to make it as a drum set player, I was gone a lot, and I missed a lot of things with my family. And that's also kind of guiding me with trying to balance that career and life. So yeah, those are the things that I would probably look back and nudge myself to pay more attention to.
All right, Tim, if you had a choice, what would be the final work for wind ensemble or band that you would conduct, and why?
Okay, so David Maslanka's Concerto for Clarinet and Wind Ensemble. We did this when I was in my doctoral program at Alabama, and Ozzie Molina played the clarinet solo. And that was one of those musical moments for me. That piece, it has resonated, and it resonated with me. David Maslanka came in and worked with the ensemble on that piece. I had an opportunity after we played it to actually take him back to the airport and talk to him a little bit, get to know him a little bit better, and talk to him about the piece as well. But that piece, hands down, is something I want to conduct at some point in my life.
Tim, is there anything coming up that you would like to share or promote?
So one of the things we're doing at Wake is this summer, we are going to be hosting a marching, percussion, and color guard camp, as well as a drum major camp. And also something that I'm very excited about is we're going to have a director's session also as part of this camp. So it's going to be kind of a professional development day. It is still in the planning process, but I haven't advertised for it yet until this, but I'm excited because I want to bring in directors that can talk to other directors about what's being successful and what's working for them. And then also bringing in some music education professors as well to kind of give some ideas on things that that can challenge them to make them better educators, as well as bring in a couple of like a clarinet specialist or a percussion specialist to kind of give some professional development in that area as well. So that's what's new and exciting for us.
Excellent. Tim, how can people get in touch with you?
Sure. So my email address is Heath T. That's HEATH T at wfu.edu.
All right, Tim. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you for the opportunity, Mark.